Alright. So here's the deal. Mario shows up in a ton of 8-bit games, some of which are full-on Mario games and some of which are basically cameos. I would have a hard time doing full-on dedicated videos on a lot of these games. I mean, how long could I possibly talk about a puzzle game, let's be honest? I'm also not very big on sports titles, and doing dedicated videos on sports games is a bit difficult for me. A man who doesn't really play sports. I understand him to some degree, but yeah, I don't really play sports. Lastly, there's also some really weird games that Mario has shown up in that I really, again, don't have a placement for, but also because, yeah, I wouldn't be able to do a full-on video once again. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about sports titles, puzzle games, and miscellaneous titles. Isn't that fun? Mario's been in a lot for his 8-bit days. However, we are going to be talking a little bit about the future because I'm doing not only Game Boy games, but I'm also going to be hitting up the Gameboy Color games as well. So, yeah, there's that. I'll try and give some recommendations of these games towards the end of the video or while I'm playing the game. We'll see how it goes. But for now, let's do this. Let's take on Mario Spinoffs Round 1. First off, let's talk about Mario sports titles. Yeah, I know, it's weird to think about 8-bit sports titles, but with Mario. But yeah, Mario actually showed up in a lot of these. Given he did also cameo in Punch-Out, but I'm going to talk about that series in a different format. Or at least a different video, one of these days. I'm here to talk about all the other titles. You know how Mario had a ton of spin-offs during the N64 era about golf and tennis that kind of got a little popular? Yeah, come to find out, his illustrious golf and tennis career actually started here on the NES. So, starting off the sports titles, this is golf for the NES. Originally, this was considered Mario that you play as, but the issue is that thanks to Captain Rainbow, this is no longer called Mario. Still, I'm adding it here for a few reasons in which you'll see in a bit. Let's focus on this game, which is incredibly simple. You press the A button a lot. You use it to rear back your club, then again for accuracy on hitting the ball, using this slider over on the side. You can also pick a series of different clubs to help as well. Bunkers still sucked though, but sometimes I was able to make par, and sometimes I wasn't even close. Eventually I got too many points and the game kicked me out. For the record, if you don't play golf, you want the least amount of points possible. Getting over 100 points is just terrible, and I should feel bad for it. Alright, let's talk golf on the Game Boy now. Yes, there is a Game Boy version of golf. It's slightly different if I'm honest. For one, it's way more obvious that you play as Mario. This game isn't terrible, but it's incredibly difficult to really figure out where you're hitting the ball to. There's an arrow to kind of point you in the direction of the hole for the course. The issue is that you don't know if there's a lake or sand trap in the middle, and yeah, just hitting it directly towards the hole might be a little bit bad. Let's skip this one, shall we? Now that we talked about golf, let's talk about golf, Japanese courses? Japan courses? Well, this is interesting to say the least. It's a Japanese exclusive sequel to golf. Now, it's a bit improved over the original golf, but honestly, I'm not exactly a fan of this one. At least we know one thing for sure, that you are actually playing as Mario this time, which is what I mentioned earlier when I said you'll see why I brought the original golf up. Yeah, that's an awkward transition. Let's talk about US courses, which we ironically never got here in the US. This is another sequel, Japanese exclusive game. This one is actually more fun to play and has improved a lot more than the previous games. The physics makes a lot more sense to me. This is also definitely more Mario as well. Heck, this is basically the game right before the more well-known game, NES Open Tournament. And yeah, here we go, the most popular NES golf game, especially one that has Mario in it. Technically, Peach, Daisy, and Luigi are here as well. Nice. This game has the best amount of options and the most realistic golf physics, which, despite being really good, I still really suck at. Still, if I was going to recommend any of these older golf games to actually sink time and get good at, this would be certainly it. Outside of maybe the tie-in Mario Golf to the N64 or something? Yeah. Mario Golf 64. Well, I call it Mario Golf 64, but it's just Mario Golf. It does have a Game Boy Color version, but yeah, this is actually Mario Golf RPG Hybrid, which doesn't sound like it would be good, but it's actually kind of badass. I didn't really get into it since I still suck at Mario Golf, but this game is a huge leap in improvement. Trust me, I just make it look bad. I played some of the free mode option on this one, that way I could just play as Mario, and this feels much better to play than the previous games, but I still need to get used to the power meter overall. But yeah, I had a decent amount of fun with this one, and I hear the story mode is fantastic. Not shocking, but I recommend this and maybe NES Open Tournament over the other golf games, but they aren't terrible either. These are just the best ones out of the 8-bit golf games. But let's quickly move on and talk about tennis, another game I absolutely suck at. This game is brutally unforgiving as well, if I'm going to be honest. Here's the deal. The ball is incredibly small and hard to track. Not only do you have to chase it down, but hitting it is another story. You have to be facing certain sides or you'll likely hit the ball out of bounds. Mario is kind of a judgmental jerk against you too. He's the ref in these games, and he will call out if you land the ball on the line. He'll call out if you swing a little off. Yeah, he will absolutely point the finger at you. I'm guessing the other guy has the home field advantage. But he claims that it's in if the computer hits it on the line, which is very frustrating. I had to go fight Mario and Smash and destroy him as Bowser a couple of times after playing this. Seriously though, this game is just incredibly challenging and not very fun. The Game Boy version doesn't do much better. Mario is ruthless here too, but even hitting the ball is a beast and a half. Yeah, because it wasn't hard enough on the first game. See, if the ball is towards your middle, you won't hit it with enough force to even get over the net, which I suppose is true in both versions of the tennis. The issue here is that your character is too damn slow to really get to the ball fast enough, and the computer player is a master at tennis apparently. I'd say skip the NES and the Game Boy versions of tennis. You don't even play as Mario anyway, though there is another Game Boy Color tie-in to Mario Tennis on the N64. Alright. Talking about this game, it's not shocking. It's a tie-in to Mario Tennis. The Game Boy Color version is the best tennis game to play with Mario on it that is also an 8-bit. This time I played some of the single-player storyline anyway, and unlike the other tennis game, I actually had a lot of fun here. I managed to win some rounds with the player character, but training, yeah, I suck at that. And wow, for an RPG hybrid, there's a lot of text here. The story is that you study tennis at the school, and that's about it. I did not need 20 minutes of text just to kind of get to that point. You destroy opponents and climb the ranks and eventually get to face Mario at the end. At least I could play through a little bit of it. Hitting the ball is forgiving enough, but challenging enough to make this game super fun for a tennis game. The cool thing is that tennis and golf on the Game Boy Color are now on Switch Online service, so that's actually kind of badass. You can go experience these games if you have a Nintendo Switch and the online, and they have the unlockable secret characters too. See, there was a transfer pack thing for the N64, and if you had your Mario Tennis or Golf in the transfer pack, you could actually play as some of these secret characters on both the N64, which for some reason doesn't work on the Switch, and on the Game Boy Color, which for some reason does. And it has these characters already unlocked. Great. So, let's talk about baseball. And yeah, I'm not going to go over the NES baseball or anything like that. This is a series in which you're playing as Mario. But Mario did play a baseball game on the Game Boy. You technically play as Mario or Luigi in the baseball game. Skipping the NES version, this is actually kind of fun. See, I don't know if it's fun on the NES because I didn't play it for this video. Ha! You can control your team enough to catch balls and swing the bat hitting the ball, but I can't figure out hitting the ball very well. I assume I'm not hitting it well since I keep getting out almost all the damn time. And every good shot of the ball, the CPU just catches it like it doesn't really matter. Man, CPU is brutal here. Still, I wasn't terrible at catching them either, so it's kind of fun. Either way, while difficult, there is some fun to be had here with Mario's first baseball outing. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend this game over almost any of the other sports games. It's better than tennis on the NES and Game Boy. That's something. Yeah, and wrapping up the sports titles, I know I'm just kind of quickly blowing through these guys, but realistically, again, they're simple sports titles. I would have to say that the Game Boy Color games are pretty dang good. I would highly recommend checking them out. NES Open Tournament is pretty decent. I'd recommend that as well. And you could realistically skip pretty much everything else that I just talked about. They're not bad. Well, not all of them anyway, but yeah, they're not great either. But let's move on to the puzzle game, shall we? So after all these sports titles with Mario in the fray, you're probably wondering why there's a section of video games dedicated to puzzle games alone. Yeah, Mario has Dr. Mario, but if you weren't a puzzle game fiend or super into Nintendo games, you might not realize how many actual puzzle games Mario is in. Given one of these games Mario isn't even in, it stars Toad and Wario. But still, I plan on touching down on every puzzle game connected to Mario. Besides, when else am I going to actually talk about Wario's Woods or Yoshi's few late appearances on the NES? Never, that's when. Until now. Let's go. Alright. Mario is barely in this one. A quick cameo at the end. But when else am I going to be able to talk about Tetris realistically? Tetris is the original puzzle game that came out on computers and eventually hit the NES in 1989. There was a lot of legal discourse, though. While Nintendo made the version for the Game Boy and the NES, they don't actually own Tetris. However, it didn't stop them from placing Nintendo cameos at the end of Tetris. And at the end of the day, Tetris is just stacking blocks. And every time you fill a horizontal row, it vanishes and you get points. It's simple, but really fun. The game pieces that you have to work with are randomized, and that's where the skill base comes in. Meanwhile, we also have the Game Boy version, which I've never played before, even as a kid, unlike the NES version. Is it better or worse? Well, I'd say better because puzzle games are just better suited to handheld consoles. And they're up and go nature, but worse because it's a Game Boy game. Ha ha! Still, the difference is so narrow that this version works perfectly fine, and the slightly slower nature of the game here might actually be better for you, especially if you're a new player. And while Mario isn't in them, I figure I'd hit up Tetris 2 and Tetris Blast, which are slight variations of the regular Tetris formula. Tetris 2 is weird and never caught on for a reason, given slight more physics to some of the blocks, while Tetris Blast is a slightly more explosive version. Nothing too serious, you're not really missing much here. Neither of them really beat out Tetris in popularity anyway, but if you like puzzle games, maybe you can dig these up somewhere. Tetris Attack. I think this is a tie-in to a Super Nintendo version of Tetris Attack, which, like that version, this is secretly a Yoshi game. It makes sense, as we'll see later. Yoshi does have several puzzle games on the Game Boy and the NES, so basing Tetris Attack on him works, I suppose. Unlike Tetris, however, this game has you switching some blocks around, and you destroy blocks that are pushing from the ground upwards. Your goal is to defeat enough blocks and keep the block wall from reaching the top, while getting all the blocks below a goal line, so to speak. Honestly, I did enjoy this a lot more than the regular Tetris game. So while I never played the SNES version, I could definitely recommend the Game Boy version for some fun. Yeah, let's see here. The classic Mario puzzle game, Dr. Mario. I wouldn't say it's the original puzzle game, I did already cover Tetris after all, but this was still very popular. Basically, you have pills with 2 sections of colors on them. If you line up 4 sections of colors with the same color, you eliminate the color sections. The point is to line up all the colors with corresponding viruses in the map, which are either red, blue, and yellow, just like your pills. It's simple, addictive, and I used to have a babysitter who had this game before I turned 6. It is good, but it's a puzzle game and it's just slightly Tetris adjacent. Now for the Game Boy version, which does a really good job bringing Dr. Mario to portable consoles. Instead of colors, you have, well, colors. Kind of. You have pills that are black, some that are white, and some with spots in them. You match them with the corresponding virus, which is actually easy to tell and see. I'd say the NES version is better, but the Game Boy version isn't terrible and works in a pinch if you wanted Dr. Mario, but on the go. Yoshi. Yeah, this game is just boring. It's Tetris adjacent again, but this is a stacking game. You move stacks and pair up 2 enemies for points. You can remove a stack if you're lucky enough to get 2 sides of a Yoshi egg somehow in the stack, which is actually harder than just keeping the board clear. You play as Mario and you flip around these plates to hold the stack of enemies. Yeah, this is so dumb simple, it's juvenile and really dull. Shame too, because this game was developed and created by Game Freak. You know, before Pokemon took over all their lives. This is also called Mario and Yoshi in PAL regions, which is actually a better title than simply Yoshi, if you ask me. Especially since you're actually literally playing as Mario, and Yoshi is just kind of part of the game. And here's the Game Boy version, which is basically the same thing as the NES version. There might be a few settings and modes kind of, gone. But the main gameplay is so dull, I wouldn't notice. Look, I don't recommend the NES original version. I'm not keen on recommending this one, Game Freak or otherwise. So after talking about Yoshi on the NES, let's talk about something else. Something a bit more rare outside of educational games. Oh crap, we're talking about Yoshi again. However, Yoshi is barely actually in this game. He comes in and steals Mario's cookies, making the title very confusing, and you mostly play as Mario baking more cookies. They're not Yoshi's cookies, they're Mario's cookies. What the hell? To play, you move the cookies either vertically or horizontally, which moves the entire row. Match a row either vertically or horizontally, and you clear that row. You clear the board to move on, and eventually you unlock cutscenes. This is cute and much better than just, Yoshi or Mario and Yoshi, whatever you want to call it. Cookies make things better. And yeah, this is also fun on the Game Boy too. Not super different, just less colorful, but it's still rather fun, and I highly recommend it either way. Alleyway. I think Alleyway is a bit older, but while you are for sure playing Mario this time, he's just controlling a paddle-like ship. I'm not sure what this... Oh, this is literally the Mario version of Breakout, isn't it? Yeah, this is literally just Breakout on the Game Boy, but you're playing as Mario. Enjoy? Okay, let's stick to the Game Boy and talk about Picross. A fun little puzzle game that, on the Game Boy, has Mario all over it. The first game is just puzzles, but the second game has some story mode to it. Too bad the second game was Japanese exclusive, huh? These games are where one of Mario's outfits hails from, though. From Mario Odyssey, the Explorer outfit. Yeah, comes from here. Anyway, Picross is just a puzzle game of filling in numbers. You use the numbers on the sides to figure out how many spaces to fill in each row and column, until you basically make a picture that's the solution. Mario's Picross did come here, but was very unsuccessful, while it was very popular in Japan, and Mario's Picross 2 is exclusive there for that reason. Both are really fun games, though. Yeah, I somehow enjoy Picross. I didn't know how to play until I picked up these titles. But now I do, and I kind of want to keep going back and playing more for no particular reason. Alright. Now it's time to talk about Wario's Woods. This isn't technically a Mario game. This is about Toad versus Wario in a puzzle game. But I'm probably never going to be able to talk about this game outside of this anyway. It is a puzzle game with Mario characters, so I'm going to count it. You are Toad, and you can run up and line up enemies and walk up walls. Nice. It's really weird to explain. You can't carry shit while you're moving up walls or, jumping around, and you will need to carry things. Your job is to move and pick up things like in Super Mario Bros. 2 and move them around. Line up 3 of the same color of whatever and remove them sometimes. It only removes them if you have a bomb of the same color. For example, you can't line up 3 of these colored enemies and remove them without a bomb somewhere in the lineup to destroy them. Remove all the enemies and beat the level. Birdo slowly drops bombs, but if you take too long, Wario shows up and drops things way faster, drops the ceiling, and even brings in new enemies to kill. What an asshole. Overall, this is slightly addicting, and while I'm not big on puzzle games, this one is pretty fun. You get a cutscene for, story purposes too. That's nice. Overall, when it comes to the puzzle games, honestly, they're fun. Wario Woods is really fun. I like Picross. Alleyway is just breakout. Yoshi's Cookie is really fun. Dr. Mario is really fun. And while I don't particularly care for Tetris, it is stupidly popular. The only thing that I don't really recommend here is Yoshi. On both the NES and the Game Boy. Sorry, Game Freak. We'll have to look at some of your other games to find some positives. But yeah, if you like puzzle games that are kind of similar to Tetris or Tetris itself, go check out some of these. Honestly, Wario Woods is kind of an underrated classic, and Picross is more like Sudoku, if I'm going to be really honest with you guys. Along with me. But I know I've been blowing through fun. It's its own thing. Again, I enjoy it. And how else am I supposed to talk about cookies? This section, though, is a lot more interesting. This is the miscellaneous Mario spin-off section. And a lot of these are Japanese exclusive. So, this might be a bit more up your alley if you kind of fell asleep a little bit talking about Mario sports titles and Mario puzzle games. But I gotta start with Pinball. Pinball is the first one up. I suck at Pinball, but I have a lot of fun playing it. Mario is actually in this game, and cameos in the mini-games, which is kind of cool. You can unlock more boards, I think? I'm not sure. I unlocked the gold door, but I can never shoot the ball through the damn thing in time before it closes. Still, this is pretty simple pinball with Mario showing up every so often. This is way better than the second time Mario played pinball, but I'll deal with that in another video. So, let's talk about the Wrecking Crew. You know, the Wrecking Crew? The game where Foreman Spike shows up from? You know, Foreman Spike from the Mario movie? Yeah, he's an asshole here too. The Wrecking Crew is a game in which you play Mario breaking down a bunch of things while wrenches and eggplant people try and stop you. Your job is to puzzle out how to destroy all the objects while avoiding enemies of the stage. However, there's also fireballs. Yes, like the original Mario Brothers. If you're standing on a particular level too long, a fireball will form. The issue is, you can't jump. If you're caught between an enemy and a fireball, you die. To my knowledge, you can't get out of certain situations at all due to this. Bonus, if you do the level wrong, to my knowledge, you can't jump or reverse issues if you destroy a ladder too damn early. This is mostly puzzle, less platforming. Still, this is fun to play and mess with, and compared to other puzzle games, this one isn't Tetris adjacent. Also, the fireball things from Mario Brothers is a nice touch. Speaking of which, I've talked about Mario Brothers, but I've never actually talked about the original arcade Mario Brothers. I ended up talking about the NES version of my review of Super Mario Brothers, so I'll talk about the arcade release here, I suppose. Nothing too special though. You can run, jump, you can't change your jump once you actually jump, and you bounce enemies on platforms up above you. There are little introduction scenes for each enemy type that comes about, which I didn't know that, honestly, because this only shows up in the arcade version. This makes the game kind of fun. The graphics are pretty decent too, though Mario's colors are crazy in this game. Either way, this game is fun just like many other arcade games. Now, if only there was a direct sequel. Here we go. This is kind of interesting. Off the heels of the arcade, we're talking about Mario Brothers for the Japanese Famicom. But this isn't a normal port. This is the return of. Yeah, it's called Kaettekita. Oh man, I butchered that. Kaettekita? Yeah, that's the word that it's called. Kaettekita Mario Brothers. But the fans have dubbed this Return of Mario Brothers instead. It's a new version of the game built to be a food commercial? There's slots and a Koopa, which I have stills of, but I never actually found personally in the game. And that's probably because I can't read Japanese or really understand what I'm actually doing here. I can count in Japanese, I can't read it. So basically, this plays like Mario Brothers from the original arcade, except you can change your jump trajectory in mid-air. This basically breaks the game in two, since part of the original challenge was once you jump, you have to be okay of where you're landing beforehand. Bonus factoid, this game isn't specifically Japanese exclusive. It was also found in Europe without all the food marketing images. I couldn't find that version though. So let's talk about Super Mario Bros. Real quick. Did you know there was an arcade version of it? There were actually a few arcade classic NES games like this. This includes Dr. Mario, Pinball, The Goonies, Excite Bike, and plenty of others. It is nice that there was arcade version of Super Mario Bros. Though. I was blowing through this game at a pretty good clip, but some of the levels felt slightly different, but also the same? Weird. Come to find out, even the different levels I played beforehand, because they mostly went into lost levels, which, that's probably why they felt the same, even though they felt different. Still, I did pretty well for a casual playthrough, but I've beat both the original and lost levels more than once. The basic idea is you can continue multiple times if you have enough quarters. It's nothing too special, but it's interesting to see an arcade version of this game. But I know why you're all here though. You want some weird stuff like we had with the arcade Mario Brothers, right? I got you covered. See, Super Mario Bros. Has a weird ROM hack style game too. That's officially made by Nintendo. This game is about a radio show. Using level assets and graphics from the original Lost Levels game, aka Mario 2, this is a remake of the original Mario Bros. What's the main difference? It has Lost Levels garbage gameplay now, and replaces some of the enemies with sprites of the radio talk show hosts. Yeah, this isn't terribly interesting playing, but without playing it, this is all just so bizarre and weird. But playing it, it was just like playing Super Mario Bros. Well, with different sprites, and level 1-1 is at nighttime, but yeah, there's nothing too special, it's just a little weird, that's all. This next game I didn't play for very long, as I couldn't figure it out at all. It's a Japanese Famicom exclusive yet again, and this is, a sweater knitting game. You would basically hook up your Japanese Famicom, which is basically the equivalent of the NES, to your sewing machine and be able to sew Mario patterns. I guess that's kind of neat. It was called I Am Teacher Super Mario Sweater. The issue is, I again can't read what I'm actually supposed to be doing here. It probably also doesn't help that I don't have a sewing machine attachment. Yeah, I wasn't really looking to sew a sweater with this, I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. Well, moving on, since we can't sew, let's talk about racing. This game is a top-down racing game that you play as Mario in. That's pretty cool, huh? It was again a Japanese exclusive, but I was able to get it working this time around. The issue is cornering in this race is just garbage. Yeah, I played this a bit, but I really didn't enjoy it all too much. Fun novelty, but nothing more than that. Now the sequel, Famicom Grand Prix 2, has you racing Mario again, but this time the car shows up as a Smash Brothers Melee trophy. This game is more fun for sure. You're off-roading and the view's from behind the car. You have a long track and certain time limits to get to the next checkpoint. This is actually a bit more like Mario Kart, I guess, but with a bit more complicated engine system. Some of these games even have shops to buy parts in. It's really interesting to think Mario had his foot in golf, tennis, and even racing way back in the NES and Famicom days, isn't it? This game did come out in 1988 after all. However, Mario and Luigi never actually show up in the game proper, just on the cover of the game, but the game tells you it is indeed Mario and Luigi driving. This is fun for sure, and if this ever comes to the Switch or something, I do recommend checking it out. It's pretty tough though. You know what this miscellaneous section is missing though? That's right, Game Boy games. Ah, the Game & Watch galleries. This is a recreation of some older Game & Watch titles replacing Mr. Game & Watch with Mario and Company. Given one of these recreates, Mario's Cement Factory, is the first appearance of Luigi canonically, which is kind of cool. They also have Game & Watch versions of Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., which are actually pretty fun overall. So these are worth a look. Game & Watch 2 gallery shows up both the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color. The only difference is a higher production value. Still really fun. Game & Watch 3, or Game & Watch Gallery 3 I guess, is a Game Boy Color exclusive, and that's the one that's actually on the Switch. It combines some of the features from the other two, but it has its own original games as well. All in all, these are all really fun. And unlike many of the other games, I do recommend giving them a try. I would also, again, recommend giving Famicom Grand Prix 2 a try if at all possible. But if I'm going to be really honest, the sweater game, there's no real reason for you guys to play it. I just kind of wanted to bring it up. All Night Nippon Super Mario Brothers, which is the radio show one, I never even mentioned the title whatsoever in my original section, and I apologize for that. It's called All Night Nippon Super Mario Brothers. And if I'm going to be really honest, you don't really need to go play that. It's just Super Mario Brothers, but meh. But it's weird. It's interesting to talk about. Super Mario Brothers Arcade isn't really necessary because you have the original Super Mario Brothers, unless you need infinite continues, in which case you can go play that on the Switch. Yeah, that's where I played mine. The Return of Super Mario Brothers isn't necessary to play either. Mario Brothers Arcade might be, though. And I do recommend the Wrecking Crew and a little bit of Pinball as well from the NES. So there's that. Definitely go check those ones out. Overall, I can't recommend everything I played today, but I can recommend some of these games if you haven't tried them. The Game Boy Color sports titles are really good. The hybrid RPG sports titles with Mario front and center is a weird description, but it really does work overall. Picross is fun if you like puzzle games like Sudoku. Dr. Mario and Wario's Woods are great puzzle games along with the obvious Tetris inclusion. And frankly, Pinball, Wrecking Crew, and Mario Brothers, the original arcade version, are all really fun too. The Game & Watch galleries work well enough as well. They're kind of fun. And the second Famicom Grand Prix is really fun too. Everything else is interesting or weird to talk about. The tie-in radio show, the food commercials, they're fun, sure, but I can't say that they're worth a huge amount of effort to find and play either. The NES sports titles aren't terrible, but they didn't age well over the years. Maybe excluding NES Open Tournament, which is still a solid golf game overall. Yeah, no shocker, the Game Boy Color games, which are easily the latest games I talked about, are also the best quality games and have aged better than all the other ones. Still, I enjoyed talking about all of these Mario sports titles before Mario sports titles took off in the N64 era, and the racing games outside of Mario Kart. The only thing I really didn't get working was the Game Boy camera, which is a literal camera and printer setup you could basically get on the Game Boy. Still, I'm not going to lie, playing through all of these was super fun. I have never played most of these games before this video, and I can't wait to hit up the Super Nintendo next time I do something like this. However, I think I need to go finish raiding some tombs and killing some zombies. If you like the video, like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell. All of that helps my channel. And until next time, my minions, take care.